in a moment of real love, in a moment of real grace, where you actually have mindfulness and you have an enlightened mind, you're not in the dark with unconscious information, you actually have reflective awareness, where the seer, the seeing, and the seen are the same. First of all, I'd like to talk about what is mindfulness, and then we'll put that together with dealing with challenges. And so, really, listen really carefully on this, because you're going to have to get present with this one. If I meet you, or I meet somebody on the street, and I have a first impression, and I really look up to that individual, and I might be drawn to them, and I see them as possibly displaying or demonstrating some behavior that I don't think I have, and I kind of put them on a pedestal, and I minimize myself, and I'm too humble to admit to myself what I see in them inside me. So I lessen myself, and I kind of exaggerate them a bit. When I exaggerate them and lessen me, I'm disowning what I see in them. And when I disown them, I have a dismemberment. I'm not remembering that part of me that I see in them. I have a disowned part, or I have a deflection. In other words, what I see in them, I'm denying in me. Now, what's been interesting, and this is something that's been known for thousands of years, at least 3,000 years now, and it was written by Egyptians, it was written by Jewish scholars, it was written by even Christian scholars in philosophy and theology, showing that whatever you perceive in other people, you have inside yourself. I've been teaching a program called the Breakthrough Experience for 34 plus years now, and I have demonstrated, and how I'm absolutely certain that that is true. We have an exercise where whatever you see in others, you look at where you do the same behavior to the same degree, quantitatively and qualitatively. And we have demonstrated that principle literally hundreds of thousands of times with all the facilitators and people that I've trained. So that's a truism. What you perceive in other people, you have. But if you don't own it, and you're too humble to admit it, you have a deflected part, a disowned part. And that disowned part is like an emptiness inside. And it keeps you from having pure reflective awareness of that individual. That means that you're not really connected intimately with them. You've got to disconnect, because you're not acknowledging that you have what you see in them. The same thing when you walk down the street or meet somebody that you kind of look down on. Now you do the same thing in reverse. Now you put them down and you put yourself up. You're too proud to admit what you see in them inside you. And again, you have a deflected, disowned, dismembered part. And any of those deflected parts is keeping you from having a communion with that individual. And that means you're conscious of the positives and unconscious of the negatives when you admire them, put them up, and minimize you. And you're conscious of the downside and unconscious of the upside when you put them down and exaggerate you. And anytime you exaggerate or minimize you, you're not being authentic. And you want to be loved for who you are as an authentic individual, but you're not. You're not being who you are. How are you going to be loved for who you are when you're not being who you are? And you're not honoring them. You're not seeing both sides of them. You're taking a first impression, and usually distorted, some subjective bias, and you're basically seeing them as something that's prey you'd like to go and meet with an impulse, or predator you'd like to stay away from with an instinct. And either of those subjective biases have a deflection, and you disown the parts. And the disowned parts keep it from being fully conscious, because you have a conscious and unconscious portion, and a conscious and unconscious portion. And anytime you put them on a pedestal or pit, and you have, you're unconscious the downsides when you have them on a pedestal, and unconscious the upsides when you have them in the pit, you're not fully conscious. You're not mindful. You're mindless. You're living in a survival amygdala's subcortical brain response of survival to capture prey that you seek, or to avoid predator that you're trying to avoid, and that you're trying to, have an instinct away from. And those states are subjectively biased and not really fully aware. You're seeing only what you want to see. You're not really seeing what's whole. That's not mindfulness. Mindfulness is actually when you see both sides simultaneously in the individual. And many people don't believe that's even possible. Most people have sequential oscillating feelings and emotions about people, even people you love and you're married to. Sometimes you want to hug them and slug them. Back and forth it goes, like and dislike, and that it oscillates. But in a moment of real love, in a moment of real grace, where you actually have mindfulness and you have an enlightened mind, you're not in the dark with unconscious information, you actually have reflective awareness, where the seer, the seeing, and the seen are the same. Now you're mindful. In the breakthrough experience, I teach people the science of the Demartini method on asking quality questions, and the quality of your life is based on the quality of the questions you ask, to ask questions to make you conscious of things you were unconscious of, that you judged because of it, and allows you to transform the judgment into something of love and gratitude, and actually be present, have pure reflective awareness, and for the moment be mindful. You're not going to stay there forever. You're going to have the next illusion, the next judgment you have in your life. But having a moment of mindfulness, something that some meditators will spend hours on, you can go through and dissolve with the Demartini method that I teach in the breakthrough experience, and actually show you how to do that. When you actually have a moment of mindfulness, you're not affected by the supportive or the challenging side of the seeking and avoiding of the thing you infatuate with or resent. See, anything you put on a pedestal that you infatuate, you're blind to the downside, supports your values, activates your parasympathetic nervous system, induces symptomatology of affection, and you want that individual, you seek that individual, and that is support, which makes you juvenilely dependent and minimize yourself to them and put them on a pedestal, which is not where your most empowered state is. And anytime you are challenged by somebody, you activate the sympathetic nervous system for fight or flight to avoid it. And again, you've got disowned parts and you're not empowered. So anytime you're seeing a support without a challenge, or a challenge without a support, or infatuate and be blind to the downside, or resent and be blind to the upsides, you're disempowered. But the moment you're mindful and untouched by that, you have resilience, adaptability, you expand your space and time horizons. You activate not the amygdala in the brain, but in the executive center of the brain, where you're more objective and more empowered and more master of your destiny. So that's why in the breakthrough experience, I teach the Demartini method to show people and train people on how to actually go in and take anything you put on a pedestal or a pit, which makes you minimize yourself or exaggerate yourself, which is inauthenticity, and transforming into you actually having equanimity within yourself and equity between them. And that is where you have the most sustainable, fair exchange relationships, transactions, business transactions, social transactions. That's where your brain fires in the most efficient way, where you get genius and innovation and creativity and original thinking. That's when you actually have your physiology, have autonomic regulation, you have the most resilience and adaptability. You actually have mindfulness. That's why the Buddhist monks, when they go into meditation, if they obtain this state, which not all meditation guarantees, but if you obtain that state, it's wellness promoting, it's relationship promoting. But now you can do that scientifically with a reproducible science of the Demartini method by asking quality questions to be conscious of both sides simultaneously, as Wilhelm Wundt describes in his work over 100 and something years ago. He described that an individual that has simultaneous contrast liberates themselves from the emotions that are survival emotions and allow them to thrive. See, when we see sequential contrast, where we see the positives off the negatives, and then later we see the negatives off the positives, think about the time you've been infatuated with somebody and you thought, oh my God, this is the one. And then days, weeks, months, years later, you get, oh my God, they're not what I thought. And you have a fatal attraction. And now you're seeing the downsides and not the upsides. That's called sequential contrast. But if you see both sides simultaneously, you know the person. If I went up to you and I said, you're always kind, never cruel, always nice, never mean, always positive, never negative, your own BS meter would go off inside and your own intuition would whisper, nah, that's not true. And you'd be thinking of the times when you've been mean and cruel and not positive. If I went to you and I said, you're always mean, you're never nice, you're always cruel, you're never kind, you're always negative, you're never positive, your BS meter would go off again and go, no, that's not true. I'm thinking of times when I'm really positive and kind and nice. But if I said to you, sometimes you're positive, sometimes you're negative, sometimes you're kind, sometimes you're cruel, sometimes you're supportive, sometimes challenging. And I gave you a pair of opposites and I acknowledge you for both, you would say yes with certainty. So you have more certainty in that mindful state. You have more presence in that mindful state, more gratitude, more love, more inspiration, and more enthusiasm, where you feel like you have this hidden order in your life and you're not reacting and surviving, you're acting. In fact, when you're living by your very highest values, as I share in almost every one of my videos, you're more objective, more likely to have simultaneous contrast, and more likely to have that mindful state. And that's where you are resilient and adaptable. See, if you're infatuated with something, you're going to fear it's lost. If you're resentful of something, you're going to fear its gain. If you're neutral and you're perfectly seeing both sides simultaneously, you have no fear of loss or gain. You live in a world of transformation and adaptation and resilience. And you're now able to be not attached, as the Buddha would describe. Or you're in a state of equanimity, as the Christian mystics has described. Or you're in a state of enlightenment in the Krishna construct. Around the world, religions have tried to describe this. Philosophers have described this. Hegel described this. The Zeno, the Greek philosopher, Parmenides, Epictetus. I mean, I could go down the list of all the great minds that have referred to this. Even Will Durant talked about it in more recent philosophy of the Western world. If we go through and we have the right questions and we become conscious of what we're unconscious of and become fully conscious and see simultaneous contrasts and are able to objectively transcend the subjective biases that keep us in survival, we can live a completely different life. And we can have a mindful state. And it doesn't matter what you've been through in life, you have the capacity to learn how to do that. I've been teaching people in the breakthrough experience for decades. And I'm absolutely certain when I work with people, I hold them accountable to make sure they learn how to do it so they've got it for the rest of their life. So you have the capacity to be mindful. It's based on the quality of the questions you ask. I've been doing meditation for over 50 years. Since November 18th, 1972, I started meditation. And I've done many, many, many meditations over those years. And when I developed the Demartini method, all the noise that's in the brain when you're trying to do meditation, all that stuff that's occupying space and time in your mind, is nothing but judgments that are subjectively biased, that are incomplete awareness, that are mindless states. And so you can do meditation and gradually get to that state where you can learn the Demartini method and dissolve the very things that keep you from being in that mindful state. And that's why I tell people to go to the breakthrough experience, to get on with their life and do something extraordinary with their life. Because if you're sitting there and storing that, anything you infatuate with is occupying space and time in your mind and running you. Anything you resent occupies space and time in your mind and runs you. You've had a moment when you've met somebody, you're all infatuated, it's hard to sleep, or very resentful and it's hard to get some sleep because your mind's got all that noise. All that beta noise in the brain is keeping you from being literally into a mindful gamma awakened state where you're having eureka inspirations and lucid understanding and visions at night. You have the capacity to live a great, more fulfilled life, a mindful life, if you know how to dissolve those distractions. All of the impulses and instincts that activate the autonomics, that create symptomatology in our body, symptomatology in the body that is trying to get us back to authenticity as a feedback, can be dissolved. You'll have a wellness quotient go up. You'll have a communication that's more respectful because people want sustainable, fair exchange in the transactions, and you're more objective and sustainable when you do a mindful state. So it'll help you in your brain and help you have less distractions and make you focused and inspired and more autonomous and authentic and not subject to the infatuation, resentments, and people putting on people on pedestals and pits and putting yourself down and up and being non-authentic. It helps you in your business with transactions and leadership roles. It helps you in your finances because people who can't manage their emotions can't manage money. It'll help you in your relationships because you level the playing field and have reflective awareness. It'll help you in your social life because whoever can manage themselves ends up leaders of others. People that are followers have to have the world outside them manage them and give them feedback. They use politics and religion to give them feedback. But the individuals who are inside let their physiology and psychology intuitively do it. And their physiology maximizes, and you're more inspired. The Demartini method helps you have gratitude, love, inspiration, enthusiasm, certainty, and presence, which I call the 6 transcendental states of the master. They're the ones that allow you to empower all areas of your life. So if you want to have more mindfulness, you want to have more transcendence to the life challenges, and by the way, the challenges are twofold. The perception of loss of whatever you are infatuated with, or the perception of gain of whatever you're resenting, are challenges, but this dissolves them. So come and do the breakthrough experience. Come and learn the Demartini method. You've got it for life after that. You'll learn how to ask the right questions, because the quality of your life is based on the quality of the questions asked. You learn to ask questions and make you mindful instead of living mindlessly in a subjective biased world where you're distorting reality and trapped in this box of infatuation, resentments, and being distracted. A focused mind, a real clear mind, and a mindful state is one that is actually able to see both sides of life simultaneously. A transcendent state. It's the ultimate objective of personal development is the essence of being. If you'd like to have the experience of the essence of being, come to the breakthrough experience. So you actually learn how to transcend those distractions and stay focused on your mission in life. Your mission is a calling that's based on your highest values, that's a fair exchange between you and others, that serves others, that allows you to live a fulfilled life and rewarding life, even economically. So come to the breakthrough experience. Come learn how to do the method. Learn the questions. Nothing your body can experience through its senses that the real authentic you can't love and turn into opportunity. So this is my presentation for this week, pardon me. And I look forward to seeing you next week, but I look forward to mostly making a difference in your life by sharing what I've shared in the breakthrough experience. It's gold. The information there, you're not, I ask people at the end of the breakthrough experience every weekend, how many of you learned something this weekend? You know for a fact, if you were to go through your life and not be here, you would never have learned. Every hand goes up every weekend. So I promise you some very insightful information by joining me at the breakthrough experience. That way I can teach you how to have mindfulness and be able to transcend the so-called challenges that you think are there, because ultimately they're on the way, not in the way. So until next week, this is Dr. Demartini. Thank you for joining me. I'll see you then, and sign up for the breakthrough experience. That way I can spend 6 hours with you showing you some amazing tools to transform your life. So you not have to be victim of history anymore. You can be master of destiny with a mindful state.